So Harrison Price from the Historic Wall Center. This segment is powered by Square. If you run a restaurant, you're too busy for this ad. You're thinking about how to get more orders flowing and new locations opening. You need to get more customers, keep them coming back. So really, you're already thinking about Square because Square Restaurant Tech helps more than 400 restaurants do all those things and more. So you're thinking about your restaurant, think bigger and think Square. Go to squareup.com/ca/en/campaign/big INRST to see why Square is big in restaurants. And it was, as we talked about, such a delightful training camp in preseason to watch young players take steps forward. And so we thought we'd call on our friend, former Vancouver Canuck. He's been there in the trenches working with all these young players over the years. Mr. Chris Higgins joins us here on Harrison Price. How you doing? Good to see you again.
Well. Thanks for having me, guys.
More than welcome. Well, you were sitting there in the trenches, as I mentioned, doing all the work with some of these developing young players. Chris, just wanted to get your take. We'll start with Räty because he made the team and played on opening night. What was it about Aatu Räty here over the last few weeks that allowed him to do this? And how pleased are you to see something like that? Given all the work that so many in the organization put into these guys.
Yeah, he's made quite a few steps as he come to the organization, and obviously the biggest step, working on skating over the summer was his biggest drawback to his game. But he's got really nice hands, and his face-off ability obviously puts him over the edge for some guys. It's such a valuable asset to have. I mean, it's why I couldn't play center in the NHL. I couldn't win face-off, so I had to play wing. So. For him to get extra shifts, it allows him to get extra shifts winning faceoffs. That's valuable. Gets him on the ice and gets him in the game.
Gets him into the game late in games sometimes too. I mean, we're only one in here of this season, but I would not have guessed that Rick Tocchet would send him out in the final 10 minutes of the third period. And he got a couple of shifts out there, and I don't think he's going to turn into a Selke nominee anytime soon, but he seems to have figured out a little bit about responsible play as well, which is going to endear him, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so, and he's a guy that can accept the role. I think if you put him in a spot that's good for him down the lineup, he'll pick up those little details as we move along here. That's going to allow him to be successful.
How hard is it for a guy who used to be a point getter like extraordinaire at every other level? How hard is that to program the 200-foot game?
Depends on how much you want to play.
Yeah.
With the other guy they just brought back up, Räty and Bains, right? Led the WHL in scoring, and now rounded out his game and is relied upon in all types of situations down in Abbotsford, and is getting the call up to the big club. That humility to accept a different role than what you have, and having the skill set and the intelligence to take on those little skills. It's really nice to see these guys be able to do that.
What do you think, Chris? Can either or both of those guys turn themselves into full-time NHLers this year? Or do they need to? Would they have more leash than that?
I don't know if they're going to full-time NHL players, but getting a healthy amount of games and having success too, not just being a passenger, not just getting your 10, 12 minutes and kind of fitting in. Are you having an impact on the game? Do guys want to play with you? That's usually an indicator if you're playing well. Guys want to play with you. They're excited to be on, to look at the practice board and see that you're on their line. That's a big indicator for a young guy. I mean,
did you see this coming this quickly?
Probably not, just because of the skating. I think was probably, I think he's going to have some trouble for him. Those guys that don't skate well, and it goes to Linus Karlsson, the same thing. When they don't have their legs, it's tough for them to grind out even an average game. And that's, at that level, it's unacceptable to have so many, below average games due to a deficiency. It ends up eating at a coach. The more games that you put together like that, it's hard to shake those away.
Before we leave the AHL team, remind us what you saw last year. Like, this roster is enormous. They've got 11 defensemen still on the AHL roster, 15 forwards. Is that typical for the start of the AHL? Like, that doesn't strike me as typical. Are they just having trouble deciding who goes to Kalamazoo and who stays in Abbotsford?
Yeah, I would think that's some of it too, and usually early in the season there's a bunch of injuries, so I think keeping like a couple extra bodies around, keeping them familiar with Manny Milhotra his first year, just getting that experience of how he runs things. I think there's value there.
What do you think of the value of Manny Malhotra down there? You know him well, I'm sure, and what's he going to bring to the table? His manner, his hockey mind. I mean, we don't really know yet what his style is. I'm sure a lot of that's dictated from above, but what do you think he'll bring to the table?
Well, if there's any player I played with my entire career, he'd be number one on my list that I thought would be an NHL coach someday. When I got traded here in 2011 at the deadline, I thought he commanded the room. I thought he was, maybe, he wasn't wearing the C, but, for me, he commanded the room. He was a big loss for us, obviously, when he went down in injury that year. And as far as his coaching style, he's a details guy, and he holds himself to a high standard, obviously a high physical standard. He's one of the best conditioned athletes on our team. And he's a team guy. So if you're not playing a team game, he's not going to have time for you.
Yeah, I mean, again, Chris, there's a guy who had the great scoring pedigree in junior, the high draft pick, and forged a tremendous NHL career, even in a different role than some might have expected. Lekkerimäki, he came with pedigree. We all heard about the shot and how good a goal scorer he was coming up through the junior ranks in Sweden. Seemed he's a little bit more advanced without the puck as we watched him in preseason. A thought or two about Jonathan Lekkerimäki and what you've seen this year from the young man.
I think Michael Samuelsson has done a tremendous job with him over in Sweden. I think he's gained Jonathan's trust, and and again to your point, basically 100% of the things that we were putting on Jonathan's plate were off puck. So forechecking, winning one-on-one battles. We want him to have the puck more. So we were trying to teach him the skills and the work ethic and how hard you have to work to get the puck back. But obviously he needs to grow too. He's still young. He's still slight. I think patience is the big thing for Canucks fans with him. Let him cook down there. Let him experience, the more physicality for months on end. I'm a big believer in playing the AHL and almost proving too much that you don't belong in that league before you get called up. Not just like, I think he's ready, like almost overprove it before you bring him up. I think that might prove well for him.
I gotta ask you this, because you grew up in a generation that they tried to teach you all the details from a younger age. And maybe in a lot of cases, creativity was squashed at times. Now, more and more, we're seeing players that grew up in atmospheres where, hey, you be you, let's see the creativity. Let's see the offense come through, and we'll get to the details, or you'll get to the details after you graduated from my program. And I'm talking, in minor hockey. Is it going to work? Is it going to work like that? Or is that why we're seeing a more entertaining game here in the last handful of years, is that creativity is allowed to blossom and then the details added? Do you think we can sustain this?
I think there is a little bit of a generational gap. I think we were naturally coached towards more of the team game, and I think a lot of these kids now are growing up, doing those pep work, a lot of one-on-one stuff. So there is a bit of a difference I found in generations where we saw the team concept and the team strategies and how to use teammates and how to work 2-on-2s and all those type of things that came a little, we were taught a little bit more, and these guys obviously are more skilled and skate way better. And I think, a lot of the times, when you hear coaches talk about young players, they're talking about puck management or game management, because they still have some lessons to learn in those areas.
They're celebrating your old teammate Alex Edler tonight at Rogers Arena. Chris, a word or two about Alex and your years playing with him.
Tremendous teammate, tremendous athlete. A guy that, like I said, when we had in 2011, we had a culture of bar setters, and he was one of them. I remember, working out with him. I had him in all the short little agility drills, but for a guy at his size, if we were running 100 down and back, he had me every time, and I just couldn't believe that, for a big guy, how well he moved. I remember when I got traded here back in 2011, after spending a couple of weeks with the team, I remember talking to some of the guys and being like, oh my God, this team's so good. And they're, look at our defense. They're, top to bottom, like this defense is amazing. And they were like, yeah, arguably our best defenseman isn't even playing. I didn't really know much about Edler at that time. And I was like, no way. There's no way that there's someone out of the lineup that's that good. And then he came in and I was like, oh my God, like we're so much better than I thought. But obviously a dear friend of mine, and I'm so happy that he's getting honored tonight.
Did his sneaky snarl ever surprise you? Because every fifth or sixth game he just destroyed somebody, and you're like, whoa, the mild-mannered Edler. Like, did you guys joke about that? That this calm, cool, collected guy every once in a while would absolutely destroy somebody?
Yeah, obviously we wish he did it more. It's obviously in his nature to do that, but like he doesn't really get angry ever, but like you see him do that and you're like, oh my God, please do that every shift. And I remember, the one hit game one against Chicago in 2011, he lit up Kane through the neutral zone and set the building on fire. And I was like, okay, this guy's ready to play. He's with us during this run. And that was a cool experience for me.
Hey, as Blake mentioned, he was just so mild mannered. Like, did you ever hear him raise his voice on the bench or in the dressing room? Like, did you ever hear has he ever yelled in your presence?
No, he hasn't. I think the most mad he got was at himself. He was very hard on himself and like a lot of great players are. And so when he did get mad, it was usually just at himself.
Yeah. Well, there's a great story that when he first came up with the Canucks, Trevor Linden called him Eaglet for a baby eagle because he said this kid does is he eats, he's got a healthy appetite, and then he just falls asleep on the plane. He doesn't say boo to anybody. Like that was his whole rookie year.
Labrador Retriever. Yeah. You mentioned setting the building on fire. These days, that's JT Miller. Before you go here, is this his team, do you think? Has he just declared that this is his team? He doesn't wear the C, and Quinn has been marvelous as well, too, not to take him down any notches. But what have you made of the transformation of a tempestuous yet productive player, a few years ago to what he is now, which is just a chest out kind of leader? What have you seen from him so far?
Yeah, I mean, I love the way JT Miller plays the game. I think he's obviously a fantastic hockey player. A guy that I use to point to for a lot of our development guys. It's nice to have a guy like that in the organization that does so many things so well. Obviously, the emotional heartbeat of the team. Obviously, like you said, Quinn wears the C's, but I think guys read off of JT's energy, his emotion. Obviously, you saw in game one, getting into a fight, scoring a big goal. I don't have enough time to tell you how what I think of JT. It's so good across the board. And the best thing I could say about JT Miller is I wish I looked like JT Miller when he played hockey. So nice. He just looks so sexy on the ice, and play could be any way he wants to any way you want to play. And he's a man. Like he's grown up before our eyes. He's become a leader. And he knows that he can take over a game whenever he wants to.
And lastly, Mr. Higgins, native of Long Island. How about all this USA content on the Canucks these days? Huh?
True.
Now, I don't know about you. Have we won you over, Chris? Are you one of ours? Will you be rooting Canada at the Four Nations Faceoff in February?
No, you don't have me there. Sorry. My heart's in New York. I'll never leave pieces of New York with me, but it's a tough call. I love living here. Obviously love this city. I spend most of my adult life in Canada, and it is hard to say that, but it is USA all the way.
Yeah, it's a hard city to leave, so we understand that, Chris.
Canuck Nation, it'll be interesting to watch Canuck Nation because, as Matt said, a quarter of the USA team could be American.
Demko, Besser, Miller, Hughes, like you could, anyways.
Well, if things go well, that's the reason. If things not go so well,
there you go.
Play both sides.
You win it either way. Love having you as part of this community. Love having you on the show, Chris. Thanks for the time here today, and hey, congrats to you and the team there that built some of these guys up over the last few years.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, guys. Enjoy the weekend.